Well, welcome everybody. This is Marc Malusis from SNY, a good friend of mine from my WFAN days, and Marc's going to be also teaching here at the new Sports Communication Master's Program that was started this fall. He's going to be teaching a sports radio hosting and producing class starting next fall. So he's going to be in addition to Iona College here. So let's give him a round of applause for that.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we appreciate it. Why don't you just first off, this is Intro to Broadcasting, talk about how you got started in the industry, and was sports something that you knew you always wanted to be involved in?
I grew up and, when I was in high school, I went to school at Don Bosco Prep in Ramsey, New Jersey. I commuted from Rockland County every day, so it was like a long bus ride. So I used to listen to a lot of sports talk radio on a Walkman. You guys have no idea what the hell that is. Coming back and forth from school and everything like that in the morning. So I always I was a huge sports fan growing up, regardless of whatever sport, whether it be basketball, football, hockey, and everything was covered a lot differently then than it is right now. Everything is really at your fingertips right now as compared to then. But I always wanted to get involved in the industry, and coming out of high school, it's something I knew when I was like really young exactly what I wanted to do. And I went to Syracuse University and got involved in student radio up there and doing a number of internships and got involved right in the field right from the word go coming out of college. So it's something I always wanted to do.
And you talked about being involved in the school radio station and doing the internships. How vital was that to your success leading to WFAN?
I think it's really vital because it's all about meeting people. It's all about making avenues. You never know exactly when you meet somebody and you work hard and you give a great effort and you give a good account of yourself, exactly what avenue that would open up down the line. So, I did a number of internships. I mean, MTV, WABC Radio, NBC, CBS locally up at Syracuse. I did one. Local radio station in Rockland County. That was my first job out of school. I interned at WFAN. I worked in promotions department. I worked TV, radio, internships. So I did a lot of those things in order to try and figure out exactly what you want to do and what avenue you want to go down, whether it be TV, whether it be radio, whether it be writing. And now there's so many other different avenues with podcasts and blogs and everything like that. So I tried to do it all. So to figure out exactly what I do. But internships are a key, experience is a key, networking is a key, and always giving a good account of yourself is also a key.
And you've been at WFAN now,
I've been
at 13 years now? About?
Yeah, well, longer. I've been there August of 2000. I interned summer of 98, and I've been there now part-time August of 2000, and I started working with Mike and the Mad Dog March of 2001, and was their board op and then their producer. I left them in January of 2007 to go on the air.
So talk about that, the initial steps. You go from doing your internship at say WFAN, where you're in the bullpen and you're editing tape. So discuss the importance of knowing and the skills you need for your internship and what the employer will look for a candidate like yourself, where they bring on and hire on later on.
Well, they want someone that's going to do the job at hand. So, you say if you intern at WFAN, everybody that interns there for the most part knows sports, right? So you're not going there, you don't know about WFAN unless you're not, if you're not a big sports fan. So the people that moved on were those that didn't try and put on a show in the bullpen, didn't try and go out there and impress everybody with their sports knowledge, did their work efficiently, did a good job, took pride in the job that they did. And then they, more often than not, they were offered a job off the air after their internship came to an end. That was really kind of the breeding ground, proving process for an internship at WFAN would lead to work down the line. I interned there, it was summer of 98, and I was offered a job out of college. I turned it down initially because I started working at a local radio station in Rockland County, 500-watt radio station. I wanted to go on the air. A buddy of mine told me, if you want to be on the air, stay on the air. So right out of Syracuse, started working split shifts, getting paid $7 an hour. I'd be up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'd do news from 7 to 10. I'd go home, I'd take a nap, and then I'd do sports and news from 3 to 7 at night. And I did that Monday through Friday, and then I started doing a sports show on Sunday. So I wasn't making a lot of money coming out of college. I was living at home. It wasn't a far commute by any stretch of the imagination, but I worked at that radio station for about 18 months right out of school. And learned a lot. Stayed on the air, learned a lot of experience getting on the air, and that's really what it comes down to, is working at your craft, regardless of which. You're not going to get a big job coming right out of college. It's going to be a small job, and it's fine. But it's about you getting better each and every day, learning from your mistakes, getting better. It's not going to be a perfect product coming out of college. Mike's going to give you great tutelage. Everyone here at Iona is going to give you the necessary tools, but it really is up to you to use those tools and really perfect your craft. And that's exactly what it is, whether it's TV, radio, writing, whatever it might be. When you look at this field, it's about perfecting and be the best that you can potentially be and continuing to work at it. And that's what you try and do each and every day.
So WFAN gives you an offer and says, Mark, we want you to be Mike and the Mad Dog sport op.
Right.
And we're going to pay you, what, $7 an hour or something?
No, it was a little bit more than that, but it was not much more than that. It was like something like $23,000 a year, something like that. It was not much money.
So you're on the air,
Yeah.
and you're thinking, oh, broadcasting New York City, you're going to make a ton of money.
Yeah.
Not the case. You're humbled a little bit by the pay, but the importance of the job of being a board op, or the initial steps in becoming a producer, then an on-air host.
Yeah, you learned a lot. I mean, you sit there, and I worked with them for 6.5 years in 2 different capacities. I was their board op for 3 years and their producer for 3.5 years, and learned a lot. First off, it's the best radio show that you'll ever hear in sports talk radio, regardless of what comes moving forward. They're 2 completely different personalities. Mike knows, he was in that bullpen, so what they are on the air is exactly what they are off the air. But what you learn is, the art form of a great interview, of getting where you need to go in an interview, putting together a monologue, driving the callers, generating interest, being able to tweak the fans, being able to get people to react, because everybody wants to be loved, and there's no doubt nobody wants to be despised and hated or anything like that. But I really compare it to when you're a sports talk host to, and I'm a fan of the WWE. They call it heat, where you walk out into the ring. The worst is to have no response whatsoever, right? If you're a wrestler. To where the fans are sitting on your seat. If they're booing, that's what, or they're cheering, you want some sort of reaction. So it's a matter of not everybody's going to love you. And believe me, you'll hear about it on Twitter. And some people will, but more often than not, you'll hear from the people that don't care for you. And that's fine, as long as they keep on listening. And what I learned most from Mike and the Mad Dog and working with them is the experience that I got to be able to sit there and really learn how to put together a talk show, how to generate callers, generate listeners, generate interest, putting together a great interview, but also getting a great reaction. And that's why they were the best.
You touched on something important, and WFAN through the years has done it better than anybody, is the host generating interest. If you look at a lot of the other networks, and really the last 10, 15 years, there's been a mandate on you need guests. You need guests.
Right.
WFAN from day one was the host generating ideas, topics, opinion. And if you get 1 or 2 guests to support that, or for news breaks, you go after the guests. But it's really up to the host to generate the enthusiasm. And it's become kind of a lost art a little bit in sports radio.
Yeah, and you look at it nowadays, all due respect, Eli Manning does nothing for me as an interview. He's a great quarterback. He's a 2-time Super Bowl champion. He says nothing. So it's good for the station, WFAN, to have him on every Monday with Mike at 5:05, but you get nothing from the interview. There's no substantive quality to it. Everything is a very Derek Jeter type of response, where it's basically 15 seconds. Keep it as vanilla can possibly be. Doesn't generate a headline. Tell me the last time you heard an interview by Eli Manning where it generated some sort of headline and some sort of reaction one way or other. It doesn't. And that's by him, perfecting that art form. And that's kind of the way that Derek Jeter did it for years with the Yankees. But really, WFAN, if you look at the ratings, sometimes the ratings go down for our station when there is a guest on, as compared to when there's a host doing a monologue or taking callers. So it's not necessarily always about the big name. You're going to take the big name, whether it be A-Rod or Roger Goodell or what have you, but oftentimes too many guests can bog a show down. And I tell producers all the time, guests don't necessarily make a great show. The producer working in hand with the host, making sure you're on point with your opinions, making sure that you believe in what you're saying as a talk show host, that your angle to it or your take to it is going to draw some sort of reaction, and making sure that the producer's also putting up giving you ideas, but also putting up great calls too, because it's really a relationship, a symbiotic relationship between the host and the producer in terms of putting together a great talk show. It doesn't necessarily mean a great guest defines a great show.
Talk about that. You went from board op to producer, was the next phase for you, but we started talking about sound bites in class, and last week we were talking about Hillary Clinton getting her cell phone hammered by her assistants. So I said,
Right.
okay, let's use a sound bite of that, and we'll come back with MC Hammer.
Right.
But talk about the creative process of putting together, music beds and sound bites, and how that can add so much to the show. And
Yeah,
some
well, I
humor,
mean,
too.
like a vibe to the show. Like on my overnights on the Fan, I play like a lot of hip hop music and stuff like that. It's just kind of Eminem, Jay-Z, Tupac, stuff like that. That's kind of like the vibe of the show on overnights.
So your music's identifying your show.
Yeah, a little bit.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. And certainly if you put together packages and everything, you can certainly use a song to set up put together an open to where you tell the story of a game from the night before, especially when it comes down to playoff games. But yeah, I think music's important. I think, good soundbite to react off of from a press conference the night before is important. All those things are out there, but it's a matter of putting together the necessary work in order to get it the best out of it too.
We touched on breaking stories and dealing with breaking news through the years in sports. A trade happens, Coughlin gets fired, Rex says something.
The negative, the better.
The more negative, the better. Talk about the responsibility of how to put together a show as news is breaking your live, because you were 1 to 6:30. A lot happened in the afternoon. Trades were made. Coaches got fired.
Yeah.
A lot of times when you're on the air as a producer.
It was different. When I was producing, it's different. You didn't have Twitter.
And you didn't have Twitter. You couldn't get a quote from Twitter. You can't say Tiki Barber tweeted this out or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I was at Shea Stadium the day that Corey Lidle's plane crashed into a building in New York City, and Mike and Chris had gotten into an argument with Brian Cashman about the Lidle trade. I would say maybe it was like 2 days before.
And Corey Lytle actually called up the
station. And
Lytle
called in and basically cursed Mike and Chris out because Mad Dog came on to the point. Brian Cashman said the key part of the deal with the Phillies at the time, Corey Lytle was a big part of the deal, and Dog got hooked on that and said that's not a big part of the deal. Lytle's not that big of a pitcher. Lytle got wind of it, called in, and then the next day we're doing a remote out at Shea Stadium, and I got tipped off by a buddy of mine that works for ESPN that a plane had hit the building, and they thought it was Corey Lytle's plane, and I didn't tell Chris and Mike at the time, and then he gave me a call back and said, yeah, no, it's been identified. We haven't gone with it yet. It's much different now. Breaking news then, it was a case of you got a story, and then it was a matter of working the phones and calling people.
So what you would do as a producer, you'd get Sweetie Murdy on because he covers the Yankees.
Yeah.
You'd get writers in baseball, and then eventually, hopefully, someone from the Yankees would come on. So you're
Right,
building up.
Right, yeah, right. I mean, if a story came down on the Yankees, you'd call the PR person to get a reaction or to see if you can get the particulars, whether it be the owner or the general manager on, or the player. If they were unwilling, then you'd look to try and get a statement. And then you'd call Sweeney, who's covering the Yankees, to get a kind of a reaction. So that's the way you'd kind of build up a story. That's the way you build the story as a producer.
And also, when you're producing a show, you have guests on. Some are more controversial than others. Back in the early 2000s, you used to have Jeremy Shockey come on and do a weekly segment.
Right.
And there was a time when he said something about the Eagles' defense or something. And that soundbite from his show, you get soundbites from your show, and you could build upon that. That was picked up by a station in Philadelphia, and then it was eventually picked up by ESPN. So sometimes your shows generate soundbites, and you get credit. Jeremy Shockey appearing on WFAN said
Yeah,
this.
and it's your job as a producer
and it's
to make
great
sure
for your show because it
Right.
promotes your show.
Yeah, it promotes your show, and you make sure that it gets the proper accreditation to whoever decides to use it, and you try and send it out. So if someone, that's what I mentioned about Eli Manning doesn't really say anything. You have guys on the air like Antrell Roll, Jeremy Shockey, where they say stuff. They don't really care what the reaction is going to be, and they're better guests to come on the air because then you can draw a reaction off of that, and you can use that clip in order to send out and bring up a little publicity for the station as well, for your show.